Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so what connects a 2,000-year-old poet, sticky rice, and 40 million global athletes? I mean, it sounds like the setup to some bizarre historical riddle, right? But the answer is actually one of the oldest, most vibrant, and honestly deeply meaningful traditions on the planet. Today, we're unpacking Beyond the Dragon, the anatomy of the Dragon Boat Festival. We see this covered a lot in Western media, and it's almost always focused purely on the aesthetics, the incredibly loud drums, the colorful boats, the intense high-energy racing. But today, we're moving way past that exotic holiday surface level. We are going to uncover a highly complex 2,000-year-old tradition that is intricately rooted in history, in loyalty, ancient medicine, and ultimately community survival. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. We're tackling this in four main pillars today. First up, origins and the poet sacrifice. Second, zongzi, the iconic rice dumpling. Third, herbs, health, and ancient rituals. And finally, the massive global dragon boat sport. So let's jump right into part one, origins and the poet's sacrifice. To really grasp the emotional core of this festival, you have to understand this timeline. Back in 278 BCE, we're talking during China's Warring States period, there was this brilliant minister and poet named Kuo Yuan in the state of Chu. He was actually exiled for speaking truth to power. He actively opposed his king's alliance with a rival state, but his warnings were just completely ignored. Well, weeks later, that exact rival state captured the Chu capital. On the fifth day of the fifth lunar month, completely overwhelmed by despair at the fall of his beloved country, Kuo Yuan tragically drowned himself in the Mulua River. Immediately after this happened, villagers who deeply respected him frantically raced out into the water in their boats. They were beating drums to scare away the fish, trying desperately to save him, or, at least recover his body. He was a true patriot who chose his integrity over his own survival. But as with pretty much all great history, there's a fascinating difference between myth and reality here. While Kuo Yuan's heartbreaking story is absolutely the dominant narrative, the festival actually absorbed much, much older agrarian rituals. Like, long before Kuo Yuan was even born, the ancient Yu people used dragon imagery to pray for rain and appease water spirits. In fact, the rhythmic drumming we associate with the racing boats today, that actually mirrors the rhythm of planting rice seedlings during the crucial summer solstice period. So Kuo Yuan's story brilliantly gave a deeply human, emotional narrative to an agricultural practice that was already happening. Which brings us to part two, zongzi, the iconic rice dumpling. This perfectly illustrates one of the most intense cultural divides in all of Chinese cuisine. It is a serious sweet versus savory showdown. Up in northern China, zongzi are sweet. They're often filled with red bean paste and jujube dates. But head down to southern China, and they go entirely savory. They stuff the rice with rich, fatty pork belly, salted egg yolk, and shiitake mushrooms. The debate over which style is actually better is genuinely contentious. Think of it as the ultimate pineapple on pizza debate, except it has over 2 millennia of deep-seated history behind it. And turning these ingredients into an absolute culinary masterpiece is an incredibly complex, labor-intensive art form. First, you soak glutinous rice, which, fun fact, is completely gluten-free. It just gets its name from its sticky texture. Then, you marinate pork belly with the skin left on so it becomes perfectly gelatinous. Step 3 involves sautéing mangan chai, that's a fermented mustard green, until its astringent taste turns into this incredibly deep, savory aroma. Then comes the real challenge, folding rough-edged bamboo leaves into a perfectly tight pyramid cone, packing it all in and securing it tightly with kitchen twine. Finally, you simmer these beauties for 2.5 hours until your entire kitchen smells like garlic, shallots, and earthy bamboo. It's amazing. Moving right along to part 3, herbs, health, and ancient rituals. So, in ancient times, the fifth lunar month was considered highly poisonous. The intense summer heat brought pests, plagues, and, so people believed, evil spirits. To combat this, they developed a whole array of protective rituals. They'd hang medicinal mugwort and calamus above their doors, which are plants with actual proven antibacterial, sedative, and insect-repelling properties. They also made children wear these fragrant herb-filled sachets and 5-color silk threads for protection. And then there's this incredibly fun one, trying to balance a raw egg on its end at exactly noon. It relies entirely on the rough texture of the shell and really careful placement to create friction. I've got to ask, would you try balancing an egg on your kitchen counter this June? Because if it works, it's considered a fantastic omen. But we do have to note that not all of these ancient remedies were exactly safe. People used to drink something called Rilgar wine, genuinely believing it was a universal antidote against poison and disease. So the crucial point is, traditional Rilgar wine contains over 1,000 times the legally allowed limit of arsenic compared to commercial liquor. Yeah, no kidding. Rilgar is literally an arsenic sulfide mineral. While it was historically used to repel snakes and spirits, today we obviously know it's incredibly toxic. Thankfully, actually drinking it has mostly become a thing of the past, even though the cultural memory of it definitely remains. Let's transition to our final pillar, the global dragon boat sport. Now, what's really interesting is the totally unique dynamic happening right out there on the water. I think most people assume the drummer sitting up front is shouting out the pace and just forcing the crew to keep up with them. But actually, scratch that, it's the exact opposite. The lead paddlers in the front set the pace, and the drummer actually reads them, amplifying their synchronized rhythm so that the rest of the paddlers in that massive 12-meter boat can literally feel the heartbeat of the dragon. Just think about the incredible teamwork required here. You've got 20 people moving like a single, cohesive machine to propel these boats forward. There are absolutely no star players in a dragon boat. It is a pure test of harmony and synchronized power. And today, this sport has grown to nearly 40 million participants globally. What's especially beautiful is that it's found a massive following among breast cancer survivor teams. It's a movement that started back in the 1990s in Canada to prove that post-mastectomy paddling wasn't just medically safe, but actually incredibly empowering and community building. Which brings us to the core of what we've learned today. I want to leave you with this really powerful quote from our sources. A holiday about loyalty, loss, and the tension between speaking truth and keeping safe. Because beyond the loud drums, beyond the intense boat races and the delicious sticky rice, this explainer highlights a true celebration of moral courage. The festival brilliantly holds together the tragedy of a man who wouldn't compromise his integrity, right alongside the vibrant, loud celebration of a community that completely refuses to forget him. So the next time you see a dragon boat race, ask yourself, in a world where it's often so much easier to stay quiet, what truths are you willing to stand up for?